Quick question. How many things are you doing right now at work that nobody ever formally asked you to take on? Not your job description, the extra stuff, the account you inherited when a coworker left, the onboarding doc you rewrote on a Tuesday afternoon because the old one was useless, the Slack thread where people tag you instead of your manager because you actually answer. If you added it all up, would it look like a different job than the one on your offer letter? Because there's a term for what's happening to you, and HR platforms started using it a few years back. It's called a quiet promotion. JobSage, the workplace review site that coined the phrase back in 2023, defines it simply: your responsibilities increase, your title and your paycheck stay exactly where they were. No announcement, no negotiation, just more weight quietly added to the same frame. And here's the part that makes it dangerous. It doesn't feel like exploitation while it's happening. It feels like trust. It feels like winning. I'm Amar, and this channel is where I break down the money and career traps nobody warns you about. The ones that look like progress while they're quietly costing you years. This is one of the sneakiest ones out there, so stick with me. To be clear, taking on more responsibility isn't the problem. Growth requires stretching past your job description sometimes. The problem is when that stretch becomes permanent and nobody ever converts it into a title, a raise, or a real decision-making seat. That's not growth. That's just absorption. This didn't come out of nowhere either. Over the last several years, a lot of companies quietly flattened their org charts, cutting out entire layers of middle management to save on payroll. A shift business press has covered extensively since the wave of corporate layoffs that followed 2022 and 2023. Fewer managers means fewer promotion slots to move into, even when the work that used to justify those slots hasn't gone anywhere. It just gets redistributed downward onto the people already closest to it, which is you. You've probably heard of the Peter Principle, the idea Lawrence Peter published back in 1969, that people get promoted until they land in a role they're bad at. Most companies today have the opposite problem. They've gotten so afraid of promoting someone into failure that they've stopped promoting the people who are actually succeeding. Because moving a great performer creates a gap, and gaps are expensive to fill. So instead of pushing you up, they quietly widen the job you're already in. It's a mirror image of the Peter Principle, and almost nobody's named it. Because unlike incompetence, a widening job doesn't show up as a problem on anyone's dashboard. Here's why you personally fall for it, even when you can see it happening. Being needed produces a small hit of validation every single time it happens, and your brain treats that hit as proof you're on the right track. Someone pings you at 6 p.m. because you're the only one who knows the client history, and for about 4 seconds, that feels fantastic. It feels like importance. What it actually is unpaid infrastructure work disguised as a compliment, and the 4-second high resets you right back to accepting the next ask without questioning it. Let's make this concrete. Say you started as an account coordinator handling 15 client accounts. That was the job on paper. 18 months later, 2 coworkers left and weren't replaced, so you're now managing 41 accounts, training the 2 new hires who eventually did get brought on, and you're the one who built the account-handoff template the whole team uses. Your title is still account coordinator. Your pay went up with the standard cost of living bump, nothing more. On paper, nothing changed. In reality, you're doing the job of 3 people at the price of 1, and every quarter that passes makes it look, from the outside, like this is simply what an account coordinator does at your company. Watch how the costs stack once this starts. First, there's the workload itself, which grows quietly. 6 accounts one quarter, 5 the next, never one dramatic jump you'd push back on, always small enough to swallow. Second, there's the unpaid overtime, the emails at 9, the quick call that runs 40 minutes because you're the only one who remembers why a contract was written a certain way. Third, there's skill stagnation because you're spending all your hours executing faster inside a system you already mastered instead of learning anything that would actually qualify you for the next title. Fourth, there's the review language itself, which quietly shifts from describing potential to describing function, handles the account load exceptionally well, instead of ready for account director. And almost nobody catches the difference because both sentences sound like praise. And fifth, there's the label. The moment people stop describing you by your potential and start describing you by your function, the accounts person, the one who fixes the reports. And once that label sticks in enough meetings you weren't in, it becomes very hard to shake. Here's where it actually closes, and it's a newer piece of this story. In 2025, the learning platform Talent LMS ran a widely covered survey describing something researchers are now calling quiet cracking. Employees who are stuck and disengaged but stay anyway, often because the job market has cooled and leaving feels riskier than staying stuck. Some outlets have called this broader climate the big stay. And that shift matters here specifically because it means companies can let a quiet promotion run for years without ever facing the pressure that used to force their hand, which was you walking out the door. Quiet promotion used to be a temporary imbalance corrected by attrition. In a market where fewer people quit, it can just become the permanent shape of your job. There's an emotional layer underneath all of this too. Once you become the account person, the go-to person, the one who fixes things, that identity starts to feel like security. You tell yourself you're indispensable, and indispensable sounds like the opposite of a trap. But indispensable inside the wrong role just means you're extremely hard to promote, because promoting you creates exactly the gap everyone's been avoiding since the day you got good. Picture two coworkers who started the same month, same title, same starting accounts. One of them absorbs everything quietly for 3 years, becomes genuinely excellent, and gets called a rock in every review. The other one absorbs the same extra work for about 6 months, then sits down with her manager and says plainly, "This is now a different job than the one I was hired for, and I need us to either formalize it or scale it back." 2 years later, the second one has a new title, a real raise, and a team under her. The first one is still the rock, still fixing things, still hearing how much everyone appreciates her. The work was nearly identical. The outcome wasn't, and the difference wasn't talent. It was who forced the conversation before the extra scope became invisible. So here's what actually breaks the pattern. First, the moment your responsibilities meaningfully expand, name it out loud to your manager in writing, not as a complaint, just as a fact. This is a bigger role than the one I was hired for. Second, keep a running log of what you've absorbed, dates and specifics, because 6 months from now, neither you nor your manager will remember it accurately without one. Third, get an external data point every year or two, even just an interview you don't take, so you know what your actual market value looks like instead of guessing from inside one building. And finally, set yourself a real deadline. Give the quiet promotion a fixed window to become a real one. And if it doesn't, treat that as your answer, not as a reason to work even harder to prove you deserve it. Being good at absorbing more is not the same as being on track for more. One of those things companies will happily let run forever. The other one only happens when you make it impossible to ignore. If this helped you see something you'd been feeling but couldn't quite name, share it with someone who's currently being the rock on their team. I'm Amar, and I'll see you in the next one.